Coming up on the next episode of Zuzu All Grown Up.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
You're now listening to Zuzu All Grown Up.
She's been featured in more than 20 films from the early days of film and television.
He is a psychotherapist and her loving husband.
Together, they are on a mission to brighten your day and your life.
It's a time to smile, a time to laugh, a time to expect more.
It's time to get inspired with your hosts, Karolyn Grimes and Dr. Chris Brunell.
It's time to meet Zuzu, all grown up.
As Christmas envelops us in its warmth and wonder, we invite you to dive into the spirit of the season with our special episodes of Zuzu All Grown Up. Whether you've been eagerly awaiting this time of year and feel ready to embrace all its majesty and grandeur, or if you need a little help to embrace the joy surrounding you, our episodes are crafted to ignite the spirit of Christmas in your heart. We aim to make this Christmas truly transformative, much like George Bailey's in It's a Wonderful Life, ensuring your Christmas story unfolds miraculously this season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from all of us at Zuzu, All Grown Up.
We want to take you on a journey, a Christmas journey. More specifically, a journey into the spirit of Christmas. It seems Christmas comes earlier each year, but the real question is why Christmas ever goes away to begin with. Every day can't be Christmas Day, but the Christmas spirit could and should be with us every day. It's then, when we've learned the true spirit of Christmas, that, as Dickens put it, you can say, I will honor Christmas time in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. You can have the same spirit without a visit of ghosts on Christmas night. That's what we hope the result of this journey will be for you. By introducing you to individuals who truly embody the Christmas spirit, we aspire to deepen your own Christmas spirit, enriching not only your holiday experience, but uplifting your everyday life with greater merriment and brightness. If Christmas ends for you, then it never really began. If you've missed the message, you're about to embark on a journey of never-ending Christmas, and it starts now.
Get ready for Christmas miracles.
Get ready for Zuzu All Grown Up.
Blessed is the season which engages the whole world in a conspiracy of love. Well, today and throughout the season, we're meeting others engaged in this great conspiracy. Today, we're joined by Celeste Edmunds, Executive Director of the Christmas Box International and author of Garbage Bag Girl. She'll join Karolyn and Chris today to talk about the Christmas Box House, her new book, and more. Celeste, welcome to the show. Karolyn and Chris, over to you.
Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Celeste Edmunds, and she's director of the Christmas Box International. She's an author of The Garbage Bag Girl and podcaster of The Garbage Bag Girl. This should be interesting, right? So glad you could join us today. We're so excited to learn about this wonderful book that you have and all the interesting things that you have started throughout your life and a little bit about your early life too. So we're going to learn all this.
So with so much to discuss today, can you first share your background story with the audience?
So I was the first of three children. And I always say by the time I was 5, I was the mom of a sister, learned to cook and clean. And by the time I was 7, getting her off to school and making sure her homework was done. And that responsibility of being a mom ended up including, many things that were very hard, putting myself in harm's way to protect my sister at all costs. It ended up being the reason right after my father was incarcerated that the child welfare system stepped in and removed me and my brother and sister. And we really started down this path, which many children in foster care do, which was staying with either a family member or then going into a foster care home, or then sometimes staying with my mom in a drug rehabilitation center, which was just not designed for families the way it is today. So that was just, much more of a chaotic, hectic time. And then eventually, I moved about every 6 months with my items in a garbage bag, which is how the title of the book came to be, about every 6 months until I was 16. Because in the early 80s, when I was in child welfare, there was a belief system that if a child, we know for a fact, if a child reaches the age of 4, their chances of being adopted drop about 50%. So the older you get, the longer you're likely to stay in a system. And eventually we call that aging out. And that can happen between the age of 18 and 22, up to 26 in some states, depending on the situation. And that's a long time, for someone to be in care without a family. But there was a belief system in the 80s that if you're not going to get adopted anyway, we definitely don't want you to get attached to a family because that would be just hard for you and everybody included. So we're just going to move you every 6 months. And that was an intentional decision made at that time. Today, we've learned a lot more, of course, that no matter how short the connection time with somebody, we know all human beings need that. They thrive on that. We are designed to have connection with other people. Of course, we learned a lot about that during COVID times of restrictions. And now we have, these great opportunities to Zoom each other and all the things that keep us connected. So now we've learned so much more about the importance of whether it's 2 minutes, 2 days, 2 months, 2 years, doesn't really matter. That bond between human beings is so important. And so we do tend to keep children in child welfare a little bit longer, or not child welfare, but in a home as long as possible. In order for them to bond, even if they're not necessarily adoptable, it still helps them create and bond in relationships. So that is an improvement that has been made, certainly in the child welfare system. So it doesn't mean that all kids get that. There can be a lot of, circumstances that factor into that not happening. But for me, that's how it was. And there was such a lack of knowledge around what was going on in our home. There was nothing today around family meetings that we really create that are important in the life of a child in the system to understand what they're going through. None of that was a thing for me. And so eventually my brother and sister were taken from me. And I say it like that because they were basically my children. I felt like I raised them. So I was adopted eventually into one home and they were adopted together into another home. And that's kind of how it was for many years. And then I continued with that home to move a lot. And it was basically, I just didn't land a good option. I was adopted as a Christmas gift to a younger sister who, because the mother was unable to have more children. I ran away, dropped out of high school, lived on the bleachers a little bit at school and just moved around from house to house and lived with some friends that took me in. And then eventually I moved in, which was again supposed to be for another 6 months because that was my MO. And I ended up on staying at the home of the woman who my book is adopted to. I always say Carly, she didn't birth me, but she certainly gave me life. And that is because she kept me. She has a motto that home is where they have to keep you. And eventually I was adopted as an adult. And the joke was that I came for Thanksgiving dinner, never left because I was dropped off in a Winnebago about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And that was it. So every Thanksgiving became this very symbolic, which is why it's my favorite holiday today, moment of another year. I was with a family that didn't ask me to leave. And on the 9th Thanksgiving anniversary, I just made a toast to the family. And I said, hey, I've never been in a family this long. And I just want to say thank you. And my mom literally stands up and squeals out, let's adopt you. And I was like, at the time I was married, I had 2 kids. I was like, that's just not necessary. It's okay. The kids call you grandma. I call you mom. We're going to be okay. And she shares a story with all of us that even her biological children didn't know, which is she had lost a child to stillborn, and it was at a time when mothers weren't allowed to really grieve over miscarriages and having babies were stillborn. And she was sent home to finish raising children, never talked about it with anybody. And so she said that day, I really believe I was always supposed to have another baby girl, and that baby girl is you. And so lo and behold, you cannot just go change your birth certificate, even as an adult, because you decide you want another family. Folks, if you want to do that, you got to hire an attorney, go before a judge, do the whole thing. So at age 26, we did all that. And I was able to testify in front of a judge that, I'd been told my whole life that I was lucky to get anything I could get. I was lucky to have borrowed clothes. I was lucky to land any family that would have me. I was never going to be adopted, so I was lucky if anybody wanted me at all. Just always got told I was so lucky, thinking, man, your version of lucky and mine are really different, but okay. So I was able to say to this judge, today I really do feel lucky because I'm standing in this beautiful courtroom with family that loves me and would never ask me to leave. And I get to choose to be in this healthy environment. And it really set the tone for kind of how I was going to start trying to live my life. There's never too late to find a home is certainly, and home is where they have to keep you, is a really big message for children in foster care, because they just know that they're going to age out at some point. They're going to have no support system to go back to, no parent to lean on or someone to go to when things don't go right for them financially, emotionally, physically, all the things. And they're just waiting for that day for that support to be dropped. And so for me, there's just this important message of, it may not be through adoption, but there is a lot we can do to create that home in our life that is healthy and sustainable and, turn the page really. So that's what I get to do as executive director of the Christmas Box International now. I run a 28-year strong organization that has served over 155,000 children. And I always tell people it's kind of a big number to get your head around. So think filling Madison Square Garden more than 7.5 times. That is the scope of children that we're talking about, which is super bittersweet, because my co-author and our founder, Richard Paul Evans, who is 46 times New York Times bestselling author, in the beginning that it would be one of those jobs that if all of a sudden you didn't get to have anymore, that would be okay. But unfortunately, every year the need gets greater. Kiddos get more difficult to place with behavioral issues. Substance abuse and mental health issues get bigger, and we have more children in our shelter, more children that need resources. So unfortunately, it's not going away, but fortunately there is that landing place for them. And I get to do this, beautiful work today that I'm very passionate about. It couldn't be more personal to anybody but me. And it's a great life. As you would say, it's a wonderful life.
So can you share a little bit about the Christmas Box International?
I'd love to. It's my favorite topic, except for my children, of course. So the Christmas Box International is set up to support children either through shelter care or resources like essential items that they'll need, or both, that have been removed and put into state custody because of abuse, neglect, trafficking, or homelessness. And if they stay in one of our shelters, they're with us on average 2 weeks to a month. There's no time limit. That's just the average time. And it really, for lack of a better word, phrase, buys time for caseworkers and judges and the people in a child's life to make a very important decisions about, can they go home under a safety plan, which 51% of them do, or do they need to go into foster care, or is there a family member that is able to take them? And I say them because shelter care is not a unique part of our program. There are a lot of shelters in Utah, and there are a lot of shelters in the United States, but most shelters, because of licensing, are only able to take children through the age of 12. So what happens is any of the siblings that are over that age, we have to separate them. And knowing how that affected me and the relationship with my siblings, it's such a blessing that we get to keep about 1,000 siblings together every year, just between our 3 locations. And when you've already lost everything in your life, every connection that you have that's been taken from you, all your stuff, anybody you know and love, your siblings are kind of that last connector that you have to anything that made you ever feel that you belong to something. And so losing that is just forever, a tragedy. So we get to keep them together, but not all children need a shelter. Some can directly go right into a family member's home, which is, we call that kinship, and that's fabulous. But they still need those essential items. They still need all the things our kids need. They still need clothes and toys and books and hygiene kits and all the things that kids need because they start with 0. So we have 23 resource rooms that span across 16 of our counties in this state that provide those essential items to those kids as well. So that's a little bit about what the Christmas Box International does. We got our name based on the book, The Christmas Box, which is my co-author and our founder, Richard Paul Evans' book. It's the very first book that he wrote. And he and his wife initially funded the operations of our organization and our construction. So the book name is how we got our name.
Christmas Box International.
What is the story about?
The Christmas Box?
Yes.
So really it's based on the loss of a child through death. And that book really created quite a phenomena because, first of all, when he decided to write it, he just, long story short, happened to have some time and decided to write a story for his 2 daughters at the time, just to express his love to them. And he wrote it and handed it out for Christmas gifts that year. And over the period of 2 weeks, he had so many people calling him, talking about how the book changed their life that he was like, I don't even know who you are. How'd you get my book? And he started just taking a steno pad and jotting down how many calls. And he figured within about 3 weeks, the book had been shared more than 160 times.
Oh.
And so he thought, this might be something I need to consider self-publishing. So he did. He said, I printed 10,000 copies and put them in my garage thinking I'd probably just have Christmas gifts for the rest of my life. And the book just went crazy and sold out. Now, all of our local publishers, and I was started as his personal assistant during that time. So that was almost 30 years ago. And publishers we have this big binder of denial letters. And at the time, today it's funny. At the time, that was quite not funny. And nobody wanted the book. And pretty soon it did so well as his little self-published book that it was the first book at the time next to the Celestine Prophecy to hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And then, of course, every publisher wanted it.
I'm sure.
I mean, now it was really cool to have. So it went on what they call a publishing auction. And he found a great little agent that he still has today who discovered a little book called The Bridges of Madison County. That's her claim to fame. And they've been together ever since. And it sold for, at the time, the world's largest author auction advance. And that's how the money came to be. And him and his wife decided, wow, we'd really like to be able to give back. We just don't know how. And because the book is based on the loss of a child, we knew we wanted to be child-centric. So we just held a child welfare conference here in Utah with our graduate school of social work. And we invited about 160 child welfare advocates. And we were, ironically or not, in a lawsuit at the time. Utah was one of many, many states being sued by the National Center for Youth Law in California for the mistreatment of children. We had children dying in the foster care system, as many states did. And we held this conference and we literally had this wonderful opportunity to ask, what is the single most important thing we can do for Utah's children? And that pulling him out of the home, and then just as a police officer told us one day when he had a 2-year-old boy up at our primary children's hospital, our major children's hospital here in Utah, hair was pulled out all over his head. And Richard Evans was up there and he asked that police officer, what will you do with this child? And the officer said, unfortunately, because your shelter is not built yet, this child, right? No pressure. I will take this child to the first place that answers the phone. And because that's all we had, is why we were in that lawsuit. We just didn't have options for children, and they were just being pushed to the next place, to the next place, to the next place. And none of those were properly vetted. There was just no time because caseworkers and police officers can't take all these kids home. So it just created this very complicated system. And we were able to create that solution with the success of the book and the influx of funds. And it just has grown exponentially ever since.
So how are these children referred to the program, and how does that work?
So in Utah and most states, now it's a law to report child abuse. And so somebody that suspects child abuse reports that. In Utah, we have over 40,000 cases a year. And then the state has to determine, is that really abuse, or where are we at, in terms, does it warrant a removal? And over 10,000 of those cases do. And then that's where the partnership between our nonprofit and the state, and the community really is a beautiful thing, because the children come into state custody because the state is federally mandated to provide shelter and the day-to-day needs met for the kids. But they can't work with the community the way the nonprofit can to bring in all the wonderful resources that kids need: the toys, the books, the stuffed animals, the hygiene kits, duffel bags, because we don't want children, putting their things in a garbage sack. All those things our team gets to rally with the community and bring in, where the state, that's not an option for them. So that's where this, partnership is really special that way.
What are the ages of your children, and how long do they stay with you?
So we serve the whole child, 0 to 18, which again makes our shelters unique. We take the whole child. So we get to keep all those siblings together, and kids can stay as long as they need to. 2 weeks to a month is average, but we really don't want children to stay in a shelter care or group home model. You really want them in a home, because what happens is you have some children that will see other kids get to go into home faster, and it just kind of perpetuates this, why am I not good enough to be chosen to go into a home? Even though that's not the process, that's certainly how it feels for them to watch, kids get to go into homes. And so 2 weeks to a month, though, is that average stay.
So how are these children, how is it different between your services and like regular foster care placements?
So we are a shelter facility that will hold up to 33 children, as opposed to a home that's going to be, a smaller home structure. There's lots of similarities in that we want to keep their day-to-day life as routine and systematic as you would hope a child in a home would get. So there's chores, they earn points to spend on things. They go to school every day. Christmas box also tries to bring all services as much as possible under one roof. So dental care, anything but oral surgery can be done on site. The well child care visits through partnerships with our nurses in our community. Transitional therapy, so explaining to kiddos what happens next, what does your next placement look like. All of those services under one roof eliminate, further trauma of them having to go, certainly, to be driven place to place. So that's helpful. We have the on-site schooling if it isn't safe to take them to their own school. So the difference would be that, they're in a home versus a shelter facility that's bigger. Each of our Salt Lake and Ogden, Utah locations are 15,000 square feet. So they're quite large, where a home wouldn't be that large. And then you also, although many alumni that have come back to us now that we're 28 years strong, say that it was like the staff were like uncles and aunts, and the kids were like cousins, they had lost. And so that's pretty cool. They feel that there is still that family connection, but it's still not a home per se.
So I wanted to know, you have a program that works internationally. Is that not the case?
Yeah. So we have the shelter facilities, and then we have the resource rooms. And then we have, because we receive about $800,000 of in-kind donations a year, which is a lot to process.
We'll join Karolyn and Chris in just a moment with more of Zuzu All Grown Up.
First, an important message.
Start your morning right with premium coffee roasts available at ZuzuNetwork.com and drink them in your Zuzu All Grown Up coffee mug. Also perfect for tea and hot chocolate.
Stay inspired throughout the day with the same gratitude journal used by Karolyn and Chris, and check out t-shirts, hats, books, Christmas keepsakes, and more at ZuzuNetwork.com/shop.
This Christmas, be a Scrooge. Scrooge, as he was after the visit by the three ghosts. The one of whom it was said that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. You see, at the end of the story, Scrooge became the most faithful keeper of Christmas. His name should not be synonymous with miserliness, but rather with the spirit of giving and the powerful transformational experience Christmas offers to those who truly hear its message. What's most important in Scrooge's story is not how it began, but how it ended. As it is true for him, so it is true for all of us. It is not too late to be the best version of ourselves. May we each be true keepers of Christmas throughout the year, and without the need for a visit by the spirits.
Are you wondering whether to sell or donate the car you no longer need or want? Consider that. Donating it to a legitimate, legally recognized nonprofit organization, not only will you receive a tax deduction, but you'll be contributing to a worthy cause. Finding a worthy nonprofit organization can be time-consuming and even a bit stressful. I'm here to present to you one of the most amazing, legitimate 501c3 nonprofit organizations in the world. The United Breast Cancer Foundation. The UBCF provides screenings, treatments, aftercare services, educational materials, as well as patient and family assistance. We ask that you help in that mission by donating your unwanted or unused vehicle to the UBCF. Simply call 888-842-5505. The process is fast and easy. Call 888-842-5505. 888-842-5505. Help us in our mission and get a tax deduction. Call 888-842-5505. Thank you for your support.
Sometimes life is wonderful, and sometimes it's not. Cherish the good, but always be prepared for life's challenges. At Private Healthcare, we provide the peace of mind you deserve. With Private Healthcare, you'll get the coverage you want and healthcare you need. If your employer doesn't supply healthcare coverage and you don't qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, you need to give us a call right now. Private Healthcare is private health insurance for ages 65 and under with medical, dental, vision, and even prescription coverage. When life comes at you unexpectedly, you need to be ready, and health insurance is your financial safety net. If you're looking for health coverage at the best price and your annual household income is $35,000 or more, give us a call at 800-683-4655. That's 800-863-4655. 800-683-4655.
A careless driver can change your life in an instant. Do you know what to do or who to call? If you've been injured in a motor vehicle accident and don't have an attorney, call Auto Accident Help Desk for a free consultation. We can answer all of your questions and estimate the potential value of your case. Call Auto Accident Help Desk and connect with an expert personal injury attorney.
Call 800-297-9766. 800-297-9766.
Don't worry how to handle your medical bills, lost wages, and pain. We will get you the money you deserve.
They got me way more than the insurance company offered.
The consultation is free, and you don't pay any legal fees unless we win or settle your case. Make the smart call if you've been injured in an auto accident. Call Auto Accident Help Desk for a free legal consultation.
Call 800-297-9766. 800-297-9766. 800-297-9766.
Auto Accident Help Desk.
Join Zuzu's network today at ZuzuNetwork.com/join.
Karolyn is creating an international network of aspiring angels, everyday people who believe that they can help make the world a better place by making life better for even just one other person.
Let us know you want to earn your wings at ZuzuNetwork.com/join, and Karolyn and Chris will send you inspirational material to support you in your journey.
May all your days be merry and bright. And may the light of Christmas brighten your life this holiday season. You're listening to Zuzu, All Grown Up.
We have a donation center here that we're able to activate to help process those donations. So what happens with those donations once the shelters, are fulfilled with what they need, then those resource rooms are fulfilled with what they need. We just counted yesterday, we have now 100 community partnerships where we open our doors to let those partners come in and get items that maybe we got too many of and we're not going to keep on a shelf for a year kind of thing, because we believe that no donation should be wasted. And that includes our international teams. We have 5 international organizations that support about 9 countries. And there are a lot of items that we offload to those teams because the US is quite specific to what we can and can't donate. An example of that would be expired toothpaste. I didn't even know, for the record, toothpaste expired because it probably goes too quickly in our home, but it does. And health departments in the US would frown upon us giving that to people. Our international teams, however, will take it all day long. They will take anything from, I also use the analogy that, when Super Bowl comes around every year, both teams are a winner. Everyone has their marketing stuff all printed up, ready to go. But what happens the moment there's not a winner? That stuff cannot stay in the United States. We cannot have anybody wearing a losing team's jersey. So you'll see news stories where those items have been like airdropped over a country. And we have companies that do the same thing. They'll rebrand, they'll create a new logo. And none of our kids really care to wear a logo to a company they've never heard of. But again, our international teams, those kids, and I've, in traveling internationally, they don't care. You can give them any brand of any kind of shirt and they're going to wear it. They're much less picky than our kids here in the US. So anything that we get like that, use reading glasses, prescription glasses. We've had a really cool opportunity to have people just drop off. If you don't need them, drop them off. We have teams that will take those and give them to people that haven't seen their whole life. And they literally just throw them into a pile. And you'll see, I was in Peru and they all got in a line and they just literally sat and tried on a pair of glasses till all of a sudden they had a aha moment of seeing for the first time. And if you've never seen that, there's nothing like seeing a man in his early 80s who has not seen most of his life. And all of a sudden he's crying and his whole world lights up because these one pair of prescription glasses that somebody here would have thrown in the garbage was now able to go to that country. And so we have 6 of those partners that serve 9 countries and they'll just come pick up whatever we have that, that somebody doesn't want here. So it really is about, for me, making sure that no donation goes wasted. If somebody has something they want to give, I have a home for it.
So Celeste, will you now share how this program, your book, and your podcast, Garbage Bag Girl, tie together?
Yes. So the Garbage Bag Girl podcast is about talking about things that, because even though the book started with this message of, yes, I moved like a lot of foster care kids do with their items in garbage sack, it's about what happens to us long term when we constantly have that negativity that is in our lives. What happens to us mentally is we become nothing more important than the items we put into a garbage bag, the way we talk about ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves and don't even know it anymore, the little things we say. So it's about, our Christmas box house motto is every child deserves a childhood. And with my book, I extend that motto to nobody deserves to feel like garbage. And so the podcast allows us to have conversations around the mental health issues and the things that make us feel small every day. And I've been also able to address on the podcast the most frequently asked questions I get about the book once somebody's read it. So sometimes I just speak directly to people because it's a TV podcast. And sometimes I'm interviewing somebody, which is really cool. I recently, which will air this Friday, was able to interview the gal that took me through a process called the adult chair. And it was really part of a mental health exercise for me when I was writing my book, to help me as a healthy adult be able to now speak to my 7-year-old child self and tell her that at that time she did a good job and she did the best she could. And there's a whole process that takes you through that you really come out on the other side with the tools to be able to recall those moments that are really hurtful in our life, and teaches us how, as now a healthy adult, how we talk to that version of ourselves in a much younger age, how we would speak to them differently today. And it's amazing how much of that you carry with you. And so the podcast allows us to have like the conversations that come up about that certainly weren't addressed in the book.
Why have you decided to share your story, and what can you offer others who struggle to keep their families together during these challenging times?
So when I first started working for Richard Paul Evans as his assistant, he asked me when he started learning about my story if I wanted to write it. And I was in my early 20s. I had young children. I was newly married. And I just knew that I was not in a position mentally to be able to do something like that. So I was like, maybe later. And about 14 years ago, he decided he was going to write a fictional version of my book called Finding Noel, which is one of his best-selling novels. It does really, really well. And then when I became actually executive director almost 4 years ago, he asked me again, so how about now? Now you're executive director. Now would be a good opportunity. And I was like, think about it. So a year goes by and he says, I'm going to go ahead and just give you a deadline. We tend to do much better that way. So he said, next spring, I would like a draft of the book. So I think, how hard could it really be? Well, it turns out it's quite a lot to write your memoir and go through all the experiences that you had shoved and maybe put into hopefully what you thought was a healthy place, and bring those up. And also in the book, I talk about 3 things I never even told anybody until I wrote the book. And so I decided to write it and go through this process of writing it. And then it was about publishing. Writing it was really, really hard, but now publishing it and letting people read it is like a whole other ball game. I wasn't worried about people, that didn't know me. I was worried about the people that know and love me and how that would affect them and maybe change our relationship and how it would hurt them. And I was speaking at an event. As I walked off, I had 3 young women who were in their early 20s, and they had experienced homelessness. One of them had just lived in her car, and they heard me speak and they were sobbing. And they walk up to me, and the one girl says, "We just want to thank you for sharing our story." And I realized that I was reminded that there's 500,000 children in foster care in the United States. There's almost 500,000 kids. And I think a lot of people believe that there's bad things that happen and then people step in and better things happen. And sometimes they do. Sometimes I meet kids that they've had amazing foster care experiences or they've had amazing adoption experiences, but oftentimes I don't. Those are not the stories I hear. And so the book, that really helped me make a decision that it isn't just about me anymore. It's about all the stories that are never going to be told. I thought moving every 6 months, moving twice a year was a lot. And then I, met one of our foster alumni, and by the age of 10, he'd had 16 homes. And I was like, you totally surpassed me and how many I've had. Like, I didn't even think I could meet somebody that moved more than me. And so there's a lot of stories and a lot of reminders for people that, that really does exist. And what does that look like? And not only that, but the kids that come into our program are confidential because they're in state custody. So most times they'll never meet the generous people that give to them. And our donors will never meet those children. And so the book gleans some insight into the children that we serve and allows you, as one of our donors, to have an opportunity to kind of meet them that way and understand their lives and what they're going through.
In my work as a therapist, I work with many people who had been in the foster care system and did not find the resilience to bounce back. And
Yeah.
many times that's the case. I was just wondering, how do you find your inner strength to be able to turn your life around into a positive experience with all the abuse that you encountered as a young lady?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the work you do. That's some hard stuff. You bring up resiliency, and it's interesting because I actually think that is a solution, by the way, because people will ask me often, child welfare takes decades to make a change, which it does. It can take a whole 10 years to make one change in any system that has legislative impact, by the way. So it's kind of a hard process. And what they ask me, what is something that we can talk about and manage to now? And resiliency is absolutely what comes up. It's about, to me, you're not born or not born with it. You certainly are born with some strengths. I think I happen to be born with a heightened level of optimism that many people don't have. When I interviewed biological family members with my book, that came up a lot. You were just such a happy baby. Like you just came out so happy. I do believe there's some of that absolutely is genetic. But I also believe in terms of a resiliency skills like empathy and purpose. I do believe like a muscle that those skills can be taught and nourished, especially in children, also in adults, but especially in children, have a lifetime of needing to figure that out. And for me, the optimism perhaps perpetuated other things. But when I, now recognize that it's all about building blocks. When I have, like, my kids will make jokes when they come home, what are we celebrating today, Mom? Because to me, there's something we're celebrating every day. And it may come from the fact that nothing was celebrated about me growing up to where I'm a little dramatic about it today. But it's more than that. It's even with my team that I manage, it's celebrate all the little successes every day, because if we don't ever do that, no matter how small they are, then even the big ones, quote unquote, the ones that, finally are going to give us that peace, or finally going to give us that passion, or finally going to give us the money we want, those are also not going to matter. And I really believe that. I believe if you don't celebrate those milestones along the way, which create some of those or promote some of those resiliency skills we talked about, like empathy and kindness and gratitude. I'm a big, big pusher about the gratitude thing. In writing my book, one of the really beautiful things that happened that was really healing, because when I was just in all of that nonsense and all that craziness and all that trauma, I was just trying to push through it and survive and function the best I can. Now I write it and I go through the process and I realize the people I didn't see along the way that stepped up for me, even if it was just for the 6 months, that came along, someone in a church, a school teacher, someone that just stepped up for just a brief moment in my life, and then I never saw him again. It made a huge impact in my life, either through an example in their behavior or something that they gifted me because I didn't have that pair of shorts to go visit my dad, anything that came up. And now I have this beautiful opportunity of trying to find them and thank them for making an impact in my life. And I think gratitude is something that no matter what you're doing or what you're going through, you can find that. You can find something, no matter how little, you can find something to be grateful for. And the moment that gratitude comes into your heart, then you now have empathy. You now have hope. Hope propels, right? Things like passion and something that we can get behind. And so that's what I mean by building blocks, is I think all the little details matter that create a building block to value and feel what success might look like to us. And so for me, no matter where I'm at, I always try to celebrate the small things. I always try to find the silver lining of something to be grateful for. And it's about just finally you recognize that it's working and that it feels good. And you almost stop being able to turn around and go back and be the Neggy Nelly or the Debbie Downer, you know?
We'll join Karolyn and Chris in just a moment with more of Zuzu All Grown Up.
First, an important message.
To find out more about the organization featured in today's episode or a previous episode and to learn more about how you can help, go to zuzunetwork.com/beanangel.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
This is an important announcement for anyone who wants health insurance, even if you missed the deadline. That's right. Don't worry if you missed the deadline for open enrollment. Right now, you can get the health insurance you and your family need from top insurance providers, even if you have pre-existing conditions or no insurance at all. The Plus Benefits Health Insurance toll-free number has been extended to help anyone who wants health insurance coverage now, or anyone who just needs a better plan or a lower price. Did you miss the penalty deadline, have a baby, get married, or get dropped from your plan? Don't worry, plans are available now, and in just minutes, we will help you find the right plan that's best for you and your budget. Call Plus Benefits Health Insurance now at 800-332-1993. The call is 100% free and the help is real. You can finally get health insurance that's right for you. But hurry and get covered before it's too late.
Call 800-332-1993 now to find the best plan at the lowest price. Call 800-332-1993. That's 800-332-1993. 800-332-1993.
Imagine having all the money you need for retirement, all the income, every month, guaranteed. That's Secure Future Investor. Secure Future utilizes an indexed annuity tied to growth in the U.S. stock market, but without any risk of loss ever. That's right. No matter what happens in the market, your investment can never decline. Down years, you're insured against any losses. Boom years, your retirement account grows exponentially to increase your worth. Whether the market is up or down, Secure Future Investor can set you up with guaranteed money-for-life income. It's the difference between thinking you have enough money to retire and knowing you're getting that retirement check every single month for the rest of your life, no matter how long you live. Over 40 years old? Call now. 888-288-7088. 888-288-7088. Sponsored by GP Agency, Inc., Raleigh, North Carolina. Licensed in all states. Performance may vary. Consult with your financial professional before making an investment decision.
1 out of 8 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime. And the chances are you know at least one person who's been personally affected. But right now, you can help. It's simple. Donate your unwanted vehicle, RV, or trailer to the United Breast Cancer Foundation. It's the easiest way to contribute to one of the nation's leading charitable organizations. The process is fast, easy, and free. Not only will you be helping, but you'll also receive a tax deduction. The United Breast Cancer Foundation offers an array of programs and services that help and support families and individuals dealing with breast cancer. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. Simply give us a call to get started, and we'll schedule a pickup date that is convenient for you. If you have any questions you would like answered before initiating the donation process, please feel free to call us toll-free at 800-324-6218. That's 800-324-6218. 800-324-6218.
Zuzu's book club features recommendations from Zuzu herself on books she loves and thinks you will love also. All of the books that the club reads, fiction and nonfiction, are inspirational and uplifting. Folks, this is a life-enhancing club to be part of. You can sign up for free at zuzunetwork.com/book club. That's zuzunetwork.com/book club. Today's book is Garbage Bag Girl by today's guest, Celeste Edmunds. In the nonfiction work, Garbage Bag Girl, Celeste, a young woman who was raised by drug-addicted parents and at a young age learned to survive and protect her siblings among rapists and drug dealers. Eventually, the state separated the family, and Celeste was adopted alone into a dysfunctional, fractured home where she was treated as an unwanted outsider. Contemplating taking her abuser's life, she eventually ran away, finding shelter wherever she could, until a compassionate woman stepped in to give her a home and love. Ultimately, Garbage Bag Girl is an unforgettable story of hope. You can get your copy of this incredible read at www.zuzunetwork.com, on Amazon, or wherever you get your books.
Wishing you a Merry Christmas and the happiest New Year.
You're listening to Zuzu All Grown Up.
You finally just kind of stop doing that because it starts working for you. Because it's really hard to just give somebody hope. Sometimes people don't know what that feels like. But if they are celebrating a small success, especially when we're working with children, there's hope that I can do it again. And then pretty soon that hope gets bigger. And then we really have something we can work on. So I just think they're building blocks. I think they're muscles that we can grow and work on.
I love your positive, because if we don't exert those muscles, those hope muscles, those gratitude muscles, when are we going to? It's not going to be that degree that you finally get, or that job, or that money, if you're not able to appreciate the small things, the little things that are right in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my goodness, thank you for that smile today. Or the sun looks absolutely amazing. And it's difficult when you're in that dark space, though.
It is. It's very difficult. That's why I think when you're not in there and you can kind of mentally record, or when we're working with somebody, we record those moments, is why I think journaling is such a beautiful thing, because I think we can go back during the dark times and we can remember there was good and there was hope, and there, oh yeah, okay, that's right, that did happen. I was able to feel that. And I think, it kind of re-sparks that energy that maybe you lose.
I like to use the scaffolding. I like the building blocks, but with scaffolding, in my mind, it's with my blocks fall over.
I do like scaffolding as well, because when you know that they start to connect, and then one holds one up and something else holds, you don't like tumble them down for sure. Not if they're built well.
Yeah, it all depends on how you're.
I mean, that's not who's building it, but yeah. But I do like that analogy a lot. I do appreciate that.
Do you have certain message or one thing that you can advise to people who have experienced similar situations that you have experienced?
So I have these little wristbands that I hand out that say "You matter." And for me, it's a simple phrase. I sign my book oftentimes that way as well. And it's, we get told to tell people how much they matter all the time. We're constantly right. The right thing to do is to say, remember to tell somebody they matter, or remember to tell so-and-so that you love them, and all the things. But I think what we don't get told a lot to do is to tell ourselves we matter. It's like, how often do you remind yourself how important you are and how much you matter? And I would go even further and ask, do you love yourself? And that's a very big question, because I actually believe many people don't even know how to answer that. I asked children at the Christmas box house, I asked a 10-year-old boy once, do you love yourself? And he looked at me like I was insane. And he said, well, no, why would I? And I said, well, why wouldn't you, sweetie? I said, you have a younger brother and sister here that you take such good care of, by the way, 2-year-old and 7-year-old brother and sister. Do you love them? Do you think they're worth love? Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, he was just like all in. Oh, for sure. And I said, well, tell me all the things that make them lovable. And he just names it all off. So-and-so, so good at this. And he colors between the lines and she has pretty hair. And I mean, he's just like going on and on about all the things. And I said, so there's all those list of things that make them so lovable. And there's nothing on your list that makes you lovable. And he just started crying and he said, I just don't matter. He'd given so much energy to his siblings to help them learn to survive this kind of world and child welfare that he felt he just didn't matter anymore. And so starting from that place is really hard when someone fundamentally doesn't believe that, and then they go through their life perpetually believing that. I think finding a place of truly loving yourself, which for me didn't happen till I wrote my book. You know, I'm 51 years old now, and I would only say it was within the last 18 months that I would say, I love myself. I like myself. It's not because I'm perfect. It's because I'm not. It's because I work really hard to be the best version of myself. And I remind myself that I matter and I get to be proud of myself. And I don't tell everybody else that they matter and that I'm so proud of them. I get to tell myself too. And so for me, it's the biggest lesson. It's the biggest message that I have is you matter. And the way you love yourself matters the most.
What are your plans for the future of your podcast and the messages you share?
So, yep, the podcast is new. So I plan on growing that. I do plan on writing another book that is built on resiliency, actually, which is much more of a fictional book. I am basing it on my favorite flower, the sunflower. And it is because, you know, a lot of people know or don't know that the sunflower is rooted and grows in the most difficult of grounds. It's why you can be driving along, you know, a freeway or a highway and you're like, wow, there's some random sunflowers that make no sense that they're over there. And so I have, you know, a story about an 8-year-old boy who was abandoned by a family and dropped into a sunflower patch, which is a metaphor of another family. And the resiliency skills he has to learn from the sunflowers, the way that the head of the flower looks to the light, which is hope, and the way that its roots have to ground in, which is a very grounding principle. And so I'm basing this story around this boy, which is interesting. It's not a girl, it's a boy, and how he learns those skill sets. And for me, it's about my biggest audience to my book, Garbage Bag Girl, are people that help children, child advocates, judges, juvenile judges, school teachers, psychologists. The book I get reached out by more child advocates than anybody else. And I always get asked about the resiliency piece. So it kind of ties in nicely to that. So that and running our children's charity is about the bandwidth I have, which is why I waited to get into all this awesome work until I raised my own children. And they're all, you know, living their own lives and adults. And
they're adults now?
Yeah. Yep. All 3 of them. And I have a grandson, a 5-year-old grandson. And
oh my gosh.
And now I get to, you know, do all the other things outside of being a mom, which was my favorite thing, my favorite career. And now I get to, you know, do all these other things that I'm passionate about, which is awesome. So.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your messages of hope, resilience.
Thank you for having me.
I think that, you know, the biggest takeaway that, you know, right now that I'm reflecting on is the ability to, I think, how do we love ourselves? Yeah. I think the messaging that we get around that is that something that's self-centered, that's selfish. Why would you think about yourself? You need to think about other people first. Those are the things that we learn. But if we don't love ourselves,
conditioned.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so just like that young boy that you're talking about, we just can't even imagine what loving ourselves, what does that even entail? Yeah. Where to begin?
Yeah.
That's $1 million question. And, you know, I think that, boy, it is actually very difficult to start.
I told people, do a very uncomfortable exercise. And the next time you're in your mirror in the bathroom, look at yourself, and it will be weird and awkward, especially if you've never done it. And tell yourself that you love yourself. I love you, and I'm proud of you for all that you've accomplished. And it feels weird because, to your point, we are conditioned to give and give and give to so many other people. And the reality is, it's like the filling your cup up first or putting your mask on the airplane first. Yeah. The reality is, when we don't have that, we're always giving only what we have, which is not fullness, which is not loving yourself. Means you get to be the best version of yourself, and therefore you're giving the best version of yourself to everybody around you anyway.
Exactly.
It's just reciprocal.
Yeah.
And then somebody else feels that from you, and they're like, I want a little of what she has. I want some of that.
Yeah.
And you say it's self-love. Pour some love into yourself and figure out what that means, what that looks like for you. It's a little different for everybody. And the more you build that and give it, man, to yourself, the more you give it to others. And it's so good.
You said something a little earlier about how even in spite of the fact you love yourself, no matter that you're not, that you haven't arrived. The thing in spite of, you are so lovable.
Yeah.
Isn't just so smart.
Otherwise you're saying, well, I love myself and I must be perfect. And then it feels weird. Like love equals perfection. We don't love anybody we already love because they're perfect. We love them because we have made a choice to commit to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Love is a choice. You can love and unlove somebody all you want. So why are we loving ourselves and just openly admitting we have that relationship with ourselves? Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really, I wouldn't tell anybody I know that I love them because I say they're perfect enough, but it's not because they're a perfect human being. Like, we're not even designed to be those people.
Exactly.
So it's like, give yourself some grace.
Yep. That's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, me too. I love give yourself some grace, because healing always takes time. It's like when I have a friend that just, lost her father, and she can't even talk about him without crying. And then she feels bad for it. And I said, yesterday on the phone, sweetie, your grief process belongs to you. Nobody gets to dictate what that looks like for you. You can have one day or 1 week where you're just feeling on top of it. And then one day you're driving home and you go to call him like you always did, and he's not there, and you lose your mind. And that's okay. Your process belongs to you. You get to take it at the pace you need to take it, which means you need to give yourself some damn grace. And she was like, yeah, thanks. I just needed to remind her that I don't need to keep up with someone else's pace.
Yeah, exactly. We all have our own journey.
Yep.
If someone who listens today would like to contact you, even purchase a book or listen to your podcast,
they can go onto my website, celesteedmunds.com.
Say that again.
celesteedmunds.com. And all the information, even including information about our charity, all of it is on there.
Great.
And I think you have to work on your self-image, garbage bag girl.
I grew up so ashamed of her, and now I'm so proud of her. Like, she accomplished a lot.
I'm sure that's a real conversation starter.
Yeah, I had somebody pick it up that didn't know me. I had him laid out at an event, and he was 2 tables over, and he looks and he says, well, I bet that's a real heartwarming story. And he puts it down. He doesn't know that I'm sitting 2 tables over. And then I get up to speak, and sure enough, he was right there getting his book signed. Afterwards, I didn't say anything, of course, but I was chuckling inside thinking, you were not about this about an hour ago.
Anyway, things like that happen.
An absolute delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Celeste, for joining us today and sharing your incredible moving story. I know a lot of our listeners will want to get a copy of your book and find out how they can support your Christmas Box International initiative. Merry Christmas to you and to all of you out there. This is Zuzu, all grown up. We'll be right back.
Do you know someone who is earning their wings? Someone practicing kindness and service to others? Perhaps an organization or initiative helping make the world we live in a kinder, sweeter place.
Or maybe you've witnessed the miraculous, the divine, the magnificent in some way in your life, and you'd like to share it with others. Go to zuzunetwork.com/tellmystory and let us know more.
You may end up being featured on an upcoming episode of Zuzu All Grown Up. That's zuzunetwork.com/tellmystory. Now here's Seth Kennedy with today's parting thoughts.
Dale Evans said that Christmas, my child, is love in action. And that is exactly what Christmas Box International provides, improving the lives of children across the world. Celeste Edmunds is an example of turning tragedy into triumph, not just for herself, but for countless others, and in her case, for the most vulnerable among us, children who often come from abusive homes or separated from their parents. Christmas is love in action. And as it turns out, it's also love in a box. Thanks for joining us for this special episode of Zuzu, All Grown Up.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Zuzu, All Grown Up.
We hope you've been inspired to live your most wonderful life now and to help those around you do the same.
Remember, no matter what you're going through, no matter who you are, there are people who care about you, and your life makes a difference.
It is a wonderful life.
Check out ZuzuNetwork.com for more on today's and other episodes, including transcripts and merchandise you won't want to be without.
New episodes are coming soon.
Keep listening to Zuzu All Grown Up throughout the holiday season for more uplifting content that will help connect you with the true meaning of the season.
That's all December long on Zuzu All Grown Up.
For transcripts of today's broadcast, go to ZuzuNetwork.com/transcripts. Zuzu All Grown Up with your hosts Karolyn Grimes and Dr. Chris Brunell.
Announcer and guide Seth Kennedy.
Executive producer Kevin R. Stillmock.
Coordinating producer Holly Ann Way.
Technical producer Stella Joel.
Managing producer Karina Filatova.
A Wonderful Land production.
In collaboration with Radio Wonderful.